In episode 5 of the Sideline Grind, we have William Peagler, the current running backs coach at Michigan State University. Peags talks through how he got into coaching in the first place, how he's progressed, getting to the role where he's at today, and what he's learned from his journey this far. Hope you all enjoy. Let's ride. Good morning and happy Monday. Welcome back to the Sideline Grind, episode 5. Can't believe how fast the time is flying. Great interview today. One of Adam's good friends. They coach together. Now the current running back coach at Michigan State University, William Peagler. Webbs, first interview for you where it was one of our, or at least you, one of your good friends. What was it like, reflecting on the old days together?
Yeah, it was good. Talking to Peags, reminiscing. We only got to spend a season together at the University of Minnesota. I was a graduate assistant. He was the quality control, but just an amazing person, very fun. Guy is, I wouldn't say obsessed with football, but man, does he know football, and he lives it and breathes it. But he's also, he's got a good head on his shoulders. He understands kind of all the little things that play into it, the relationship side of things, and be able to have fun. You can't take it too serious. So this interview kind of encompasses it all, and I think people and our listeners will get a good idea of who Coach Peagler is as a person and as a coach.
For sure. Yeah, and just talking with him, and you guys will see where all he's been. He's been around the block, more so than any other interview that we've had on. But you can tell he definitely pulls something from each of those experiences and ensures that he's applying what he's learned to his current, situation, either with his relationship with the other coaches or his players or, future recruits. With that being said, 5th interview, episode 5, Will Peagler, current Michigan State running back coach. Okay, we'd like to welcome on our next guest, the current Michigan State running back coach, Will Peagler. Will, how you doing today, my man?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
We're doing great. Everybody's well, staying healthy, and enjoying the time with family and friends. Webbs, quick check. How you doing?
Steve, I'm doing great, and it's really fun to have an old friend on. Coach Peagler, I call him Peags, but out of respect, I'll call him Coach Peagler because he is definitely.
Go with Peags, man. I think it works.
No, okay, because Peags. I tell you what, man, I'm looking forward to this one. I enjoy talking with you. I enjoy catching up, and it's been a while, and I'm looking forward to just kind of going back a little bit, hearing your story, and diving in more. So thanks so much for joining us.
No problem, man. It's going to be fun. I think we're going to have a good time today.
I love it. Yeah. So Peags, just scrolling through your Twitter a little bit, I'm finding some common themes. A lot of GIFs, however people want to call them, and a ton of Ric Flair. Do you mind giving us a little Ric Flair woo to start things off and get the juices pumping a little bit?
Yeah, I think I might can do that for you. Woo!
Oh man, I love it.
Nothing like a good Ric Flair woo to get your day going, man.
Yeah.
Limousine riding, jet flying, fifth dealer, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun. I remember that from my childhood for sure.
Yeah, boy.
Until you see the 30 for 30, you think you lived the life.
I love it.
And just your choice of gifts. A ton of Dumb and Dumber. I saw Little Rascals in there. You got a good selection. So I respect the game.
Can I ask this?
You gotta have a little fun with it for sure.
Is it called a GIF? Is it called a GIF or is it called a GIF?
I have yet to figure that out. I kind of go with both of them, see what looks people give me when I say GIF or GIF, and whichever one's the funniest look, I go the opposite way.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in the recruiting world, if you use it so much, if you're talking to a recruit, you better know the lingo. Is it a GIF or a Jiffy? Anyways.
That's what I was going with when I said it because I wasn't sure which way it was supposed to go.
I think I call it a GIF, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess that I'm probably wrong. So.
As long as you have confidence saying it, nobody's going to say anything different.
Exactly. It's all about the presentation.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Peags, I mean, 9 schools in 11 years thus far with coaching. I mean, do you have like a blanket with a patch for each school you've been at yet? Is that something that Adam and I need to start getting together for you?
That's something you guys might need to start putting together for me. You know, it's almost one of those feelings where I feel like I've kept like a backpack constantly for the change that was about to happen within 6 to 9 months, you know, and I'm hoping those days are behind me. But yeah, man, it's been a crazy ride. You know, I think obviously Adam knows from being in the profession and, you know, obviously playing the game, it's a hard profession to make it in. And especially with my background, not playing in college, it's really been one of those situations where you take the next opportunity and you try to grow at each spot. And, you know, and I almost feel bad taking so many jobs over the last few years, but I really do feel like at the end of the day, in every situation, I've always taken a job that was a better situation for me and improving potentially my career. You know, not necessarily the best spot for me geographically and all that stuff, but I do think it's been a continuous growth in the profession, and I think, you know, hopefully now I'm going to see kind of the fruits of all that time.
Well, yeah, I mean, congratulations on the move. I know with COVID and everything, you're not in East Lansing at the moment. I do have one recommendation for you. Once you do get to East Lansing or Lansing, it's called Golden Harvest. It's in the Lansing area, but it's a little low-key, great breakfast spot. So make sure you write that one down.
I definitely will. And Coach Weber will probably remember when we went and ate breakfast and put on quite a show in downtown Minneapolis there in Dinky Town. There's one thing I'm dang good at, it's eating food. I can assure you that.
So, you know, just to jump in on that, again, why I'm so happy to have Coach Peagler on again. Dude, more respect for you because now being where you're at, it's not by surprise and it's not a shock to me to see that you have now become at the Division I level and the higher level in the Big Ten as a position coach. It's well deserved, and I know we'll get into this in the future in our conversations. But dude, you've remained the same person, and through it all, you are this little Southern gentleman that is fiery about football, that knows his food and knows his football. And I've loved every single time that I've actually had a chance to sit there and talk with you. I don't know if there's one coach out there that has had a chance to coach with you or be on the staff with you that doesn't just fall in love with you, because you are just one of the all-time greats. So thank you so much for, again, doing this, and your food recommendations, again, people should follow because they're gonna be spot on.
Well, you know, I appreciate you saying all those things. You know, I think at the end of the day, you have to have convictions and you have to be who you are. I think so many times in this profession, there's like a facade put up that you think you have to act a certain way. And, you know, I think I've consistently been myself, and for better or worse in certain situations. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that does mean a lot to me, because at times you do think in your head, you're like, man, I might need to change something about me. But I stayed true to myself, and eventually something positive, you know, came out of it. It's been positive all along, just the growth and all those things. But, you know, ultimately, you know, everybody talks about the process, but it is a little bit of results oriented and end goal in mind. And I've always wanted to be a Division I college football coach. I mean, that's what I've wanted. I never thought in my wildest imagination that it would be in the Big Ten. But before we really get rolling, what was the name of that place we went to in Dinky Town, the breakfast spot that was literally like shoulder width only? Like you had to like stand in line. I'm sure it's closed down during COVID. There's no chance of surviving.
Well, you'd be surprised, Peags. Those little spots have a way to find their way. You're thinking of Al's Breakfast there, Peags. Al's.
Exactly it.
That's our first ad.
The hash browns, they have the really good hash browns and all that stuff. Yeah.
Al's Breakfast. Phenomenal breakfast.
I felt uncomfortable back then standing in the place. It was delicious, but I mean, my gosh, in these times, I don't know how it's working.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, it's. And you know, it's an establishment of the University of Minnesota. It's been there for so long. What I'm excited for you now too, with all these schools you've been to, you know, you start to pick up a few spots along the way. You might be Guy Fieri here in a little bit if you play your cards right.
No question. You should see my hair during the COVID here, man. It's my beard's big and my hair's all over the place. So you could make a strong argument if I just got some blonde spikes going, it might look that way.
Because you used to, Peags, you used to kind of keep it a little high and tight. You used to kind of keep it professional. Sometimes you let yourself go, but I feel like now, you gotta, it's during COVID, everything's fair game. So I appreciate that.
Everything's fair game, absolutely. As soon as we get the word that we're coming back and all that good stuff, I am going to trim her up and start looking pretty again.
Good.
Well,
Good.
I think you look great no matter what you have going on.
I appreciate it. It must be that Ric Flair gif you looked at.
Oh man. Okay. Well, quick. I mean, I know we're still talking about old times in your guys' relationship, but I've been hearing so much about this nickname about Outback.
Okay.
I don't know where it stems from. I have no idea what it's about. Can you dive into that a little bit, please?
I absolutely can. I don't remember the exact year. I would say it was in 2006 or so, 2007, whenever I was in college or whatever, and I was working at Outback, trying to make a few bucks. There's no better way to make money in college than, obviously being a bartender, being a server, and I was a server, and we did an end of spring catering event for the football team at Clemson, and Coach Spence, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, he had some book next to him, and I'm almost positive it was the Dean Smith, The Carolina Way book. And I'd read it before, and I just kind of struck a conversation with him. And at some point it came up, he asked me what I wanted to do, what I was majoring in, or something along those lines. I said, Coach, to be honest with you, I've always wanted to coach college football. I grew up a huge Clemson fan, season ticket holder, and just for whatever reason, I've just always wanted to coach college football, not high school, not NFL, but always college. And he was like, all right, well, why don't you come to my quarterback meeting in Peags, he said. And I was like, heck yeah, let's go. And I came in, sitting back there, the quarterbacks at the time were Will Proctor. It was the year after Charlie Whitehurst had just left. So I'm guessing it was 2007. And it was Will Proctor, Cullen Harper, Tribble Reese, and those guys. And I sat through the meeting, and after it was over, he was like, what did you think? And I was like, I really enjoyed it, Coach. I took notes the whole time. He's like, all right, well, let me see if you're serious about this thing. And he gave me an article on Inside Zone. It was like, it must have been an article from the 80s. I don't remember the exact title. But he was like, I want you to read this and come back and teach it to me. So I studied it and, talked about 6-inch laterals and, creating distortion in the defense, both horizontally and laterally and all that stuff, and vertical seams and blah, 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 and the footwork of the back, what the quarterback was doing from under, because everything's under center still back then for the most part. And he, I think I did a pretty good job. And where the Outback part actually comes in, though, is Coach Bowden was the head coach at the time, and he knew who I was. They asked if I could stick around and learn and all that stuff, and he was, I can't say enough, I'm not in this position, I'm not sitting in the seat if Coach Bowden doesn't let me just hang around. And he did that, and one day we were out at practice, and he didn't know my name, but he knew my story that I worked at Outback. I was the wheel volunteer guy, and he was like, hey, Outback, come over here. And so everybody from that point on started calling me Outback. So it took me about 12 years to finally get rid of that, and you just brought it back, so I'm screwed. Thanks a lot there. No, I'm kidding.
Well, we'll cut this part out. We'll cut that whole story out.
No, you're good. It's a good story. It worked out pretty well for me because my proprietor at Outback, his name was Bill, was a big Alabama football fan. And so he really got to learn a lot of stuff because he was such a big football fan. I got Coach Napier to get me a Nick Saban because Coach Burns left to go to Alabama to be the running backs coach. I got Coach Saban to sign a hat and stuff on him, so I could do basically whatever I wanted to. So it worked out pretty well. But that's the origin of the Outback story.
Peags, first off, awesome story. I love that you own it, and you should have. Those are the best. Where it comes organically. I've tried to make my own nickname in the past. It doesn't work so well, and when it comes organically like that, naturally, where those are the best type of nicknames, and it's from a place of, first off, you being like you say. You were just kind of lucky to be there, and you just kind of, they're throwing paperwork at you, just kind of stuff. 95%, 98% of people, when things are given to them like that, they'd be like, okay, no, I'm done. Forget this. So, you kind of play it off like, well, no, Like I just kept on taking the next challenge, and I'm just saying I feel like early on you knew what you wanted to do, and you were willing to do whatever it really took, and you didn't really care. It's like you're around these football coaches, this football staff. You're in heaven. Is that kind of right, or?
I would say that's 100% accurate. I think, I was in heaven because, like I said, I grew up a Clemson fan. I mean, everything from my childhood growing up was Clemson football, within reason. Obviously, there's other things, but the great memories of my lifetime are me and my dad driving down the road, going to games, talking about what can they do a little differently. I was just always intrigued by the strategy aspect of it and all that good stuff. And exactly what you said, it was a dream. I mean, Napier Coach Napier, who was the tight ends coach at the time, is now the head coach at UL Lafayette. He was the one that really, if I had to say in this profession, that really took me under his wing and tried to show me the way to be him. But within that, Brad Scott, I remember very vividly. Brad Scott's retired now. He was the old head coach at South Carolina. He was the O-line coach at Clemson at the time, former OC at Florida State when Charlie Ward won the Heisman. When they won their first national championship with Coach Bowden. Yeah, throwing some great names at you there.
Yeah.
And Coach Scott saw me kind of being weird, and just kind of standing around the corner like I didn't want to intrude. I wanted to learn, and I was very eager. I've always been eager. I always wanted to know the whole picture. I wasn't just satisfied with knowing the quarterback play, the O-line play, the receiver play. I wanted to know the whole picture because ultimately I do want to be a head coach and I want to be a coordinator. And he could see me around the corner. He was like, and Coach Scott's got that old country bumpkin voice. He's like, well, heck, rookie. I mean, how you going to learn standing outside in the hallway? Get your butt in here. And I just started going in the O-line room and just started taking notes on that. And those pieces started fitting together. And Coach Sweeney, who everybody knows, obviously, he was the receivers coach. And, he let me go sit in his meetings, and I learned a lot about that stuff. And understood how important, I know it gets talked about a lot, but how important the teaching piece really is in this profession. Coach Sweeney, I thought, was a phenomenal teacher and really did a great job of articulating exactly what his plan was to his position group, which I think in turn you've seen since he's become the head coach there. The guy's got a vision, he's got a plan. It was evident then, and it's even more evident now.
Yeah, and Peags, you kind of talking about Dabble a little bit here, I guess, is making the jump from a position coach straight to being a head coach, right? He bypassed being an offensive coordinator. And kind of what you're saying is that you saw that in his meetings, that his ability to articulate, his ability to connect and to be organized, you can transcend that. You don't have to go through these, say, quote unquote, stages of or levels that you have to be as a coach. Like if you are capable of being in that position, you will hopefully eventually be able to given that opportunity. Do you feel like it's important to be an offensive coordinator before you become a head coach, or do you think I don't know? I guess I'd kind of like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it can go both ways, honestly. Even as a fan, in 2003, when Coach Sweeney first became an assistant there, you could see there was something different about the way he connected with his players. And he tried to get the UAB head coaching job, if I remember right. I could be wrong on the schools, but he's from Alabama, so that makes sense. And he got turned down for that job, so he was trying to get a head coaching job. I think the things that you talked about earlier, being a great teacher, being able to articulate that message, being able to connect with people, ultimately is what a head coach really is. I mean, that really is what they do. They go out, whether it's with boosters, whether it's with the fan base, whether it's with the players, whether it's with the families of recruits and all that stuff. I mean, they're constantly connecting. They're constantly, having to be good in that CEO type role, especially nowadays. I think you're seeing it more so. Some guys are getting away from X's and O's pieces and be more figurehead, which Coach Sweeney certainly knows X's and O's, but I do think he probably takes a little bit more of a figurehead approach than some other head coaches. But, as far as the coordinator piece, I do think they can merit in becoming a coordinator first, because ultimately that's kind of your first shot at running a room out. The guys that I don't think looks at head coaching jobs and the special teams coordinator, they're the guys that are interacting with the entire team. I think those guys, getting to stand in front of the room, again, like the way we do it at Michigan State, everybody that's not a quarterback, an O-lineman or D-lineman is in our special teams meeting. So those guys are interacting with our players every single day. And you remember from playing and all that stuff. I mean, those guys have as good of a pulse as anybody, but for whatever reason, they're not getting those opportunities. You've seen John Harbaugh obviously have success in the NFL. I'm trying to think of some other special teams guys.
No, but Peags, you bring up a great point, and that's something that maybe is kind of lost is, the special team side of the game, although it's only maybe, I don't know what it comes out to. You might know 10% of the game, maybe more, maybe less, 15% of the game of actual plays run in special teams. Do you actually kind of know off the top of your head what it comes out to?
I don't know the exact number, but I know more ground is exchanged than anything else on a single special teams play. If you just think about the ball being kicked off, you're talking 60 yards in airspace.
Yeah. So if you want football knowledge and you want football perspective, Coach Peagler is your man. So Pigs, one follow-up question with that. So, again, special teams coaches probably have a better ability or more of an impact or an easier route to being a head coach because they deal with both sides instead of just say offense or defense. But when you are a head coach, are you going to call your own plays or are you going to delegate that out?
I shouldn't be thinking about these type of things. I shouldn't be blooming where I'm planning and focusing on the job and all that stuff. But people say that stuff. I've thought about it every day since I was about 12 years old. And I think as of right now, I want to call plays. But, things could change. I think it's a matter of who you can get on your staff to, who you feel comfortable with, and are they the same mindset of you, and are they going to call the game exactly how you see fit? Because I think all the pieces have to fit together. I think there's a lot of coordinators out there that are just concerned about scoring points and all that stuff, and that's not what I'm interested in. Hell, I don't give a damn if we win every game 3-0. You work for Coach Johnson. He's got that same philosophy still. I mean, I don't care if we win 3-2. When I was at Valdosta State in 2010, we won a game 5-0. Top 5 matchup in D2 football. I don't care. Call the game to win the game, and that's what I want. And that's kind of why I think I would like to call plays, because I know I'd be doing everything I could to win the game for our team. But the other side of it is, man, you don't get to spend as much time with the players. You don't get to go be in those special teams meetings. You don't get to go into the defensive meetings. And Sean McVay, you see him out with the Rams calling the plays. Does a great job. He's one of the most innovative guys in the league as far as jets and flies and all that stuff. But in between series, and I know they have a new DC now, but Wade Phillips was just calling the defense. It was like two entities on the team, and I think it's important that those pieces fit together. So that's a great question. If I was given the most sincere, honest answer, I would say I want to call plays, but I'm willing to do whatever based on who I can hire from a staff standpoint that day, or if that day.
And I think that speaks to your mindset and that win first and team first mentality. You did mention, your relationship with Coach Johnson, the OC at Michigan State. I was curious to know, you guys have been around the block a little bit together. You've coached obviously together at a few different schools. What's it like with your experience being at so many different places, coming into a new role, already having, a relationship with the offensive coordinator that you're going to be working with?
Well, the first thing I think I need to say is, and Webb can back me up there, I don't know why the guy keeps following me around. I mean, it seems like he could blaze his own trail without me pulling him along and him riding my coattails constantly. But
I always say, you say that, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, you guys end up at the same spots. I wonder why he keeps on following you around like that.
Exactly. You think he'd be tired of me by now. Mm-hmm. Now, the first thing I want to say about Jay Johnson, and Adam knows this, there's not a better human being on this earth than Jay Johnson. Just as good of a human being, a great dad, great husband, the example that you want to be in this profession. He really is. He does not believe in working to work. I mean, he wants you to enjoy your life, and he's been very successful everywhere he's been. But to answer your question, I didn't think Coach Johnson really liked me for about 3 years. He's laid back. I knew he liked me, but until the Minnesota job came open and he called me up to ask me if I wanted to go, I really wasn't. He's his own man. He's just kind of quiet. He kind of does his own thing. He's the most efficient human being that's ever existed on earth. I mean, I don't think he uses an alarm. He lived with me when we first got to Minnesota. Yeah, exactly. Ditto. For about the first month we lived together, I never heard an alarm go off. Now, that was because he was getting up at 4:30 and I was still in bed. But, Coach Johnson, man, he's I talked about Coach Napier earlier. I think Coach Johnson's probably that second piece for me in terms of he's meant so much to my career and meant so much to me as a person. We're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I have learned and taken some things from him that I think I have applied to my life over the last few years that have made me a better person. But the comfort level is there. As a matter of fact, when we first got to Michigan State, we were watching cut-ups, and we just watched them at Colorado. Obviously with the timing of everything in February, you've already started your off-season cut-ups and trying to figure out what happened at Colorado, where we could have been better, what we did well, blah, 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 and kind of going through that quality control aspect. And I'd already watched every single cut-up before we got to Michigan State. So we get there, and I'm just like, my gosh, I know this. I'm trying to be positive, but I'm just sitting there like, man, come on, come on, come on. But there is some familiarity. Like, I feel very confident I can go in and, I sat in the quarterback room last year for the most part, even though I coached the running backs at Colorado. You guys might want to get into that later. But, I just learned so much. And I have such a good feel because I've been with them since 2011, 12, 13. And then we went to Minnesota for a year. That's 4 seasons. We were at Georgia for another season together, and he stayed 1 extra year. And then we're back together at Colorado. I think that's 6 years. The math's not very good, but I think there is familiarity. I mean, he's changed some of the terminology a little bit since I think it's a lot of the same carryover, and yeah, I feel really comfortable. When he speaks, I feel like we're speaking the same language. He could just say, hey, Peags, what do you think here? What was this? And I can easily reflect back and say, I think we caught it this because of that. And I do think there's a comfort level with him. And me being the running backs coach, obviously, my O-line experience, I think, really helps there. And I think he feels really comfortable because our protection is a little different than some of the protections I've done in the past that Coach Cap does, our O-line coach. And it's good stuff, though, man. It's really good. And I think he feels comfortable with me teaching it because he's seen me in that environment. And he knows I know the entire offense. Yeah, I think that's why I'm here. I mean, at the end of the day, I made an impression on Coach Tucker, and I think Coach Johnson's comfortable with me. So,
I mean, based off of what Webbs is saying and your guys' relationship, and just, what we've been on talking about 35 minutes already, I can already tell that, you got an infectious personality. So, looking forward to seeing how well you guys do, despite being a Michigan grad. Looking forward to seeing how Michigan State.
I wasn't going to call you out on the blue stuff, man. But it is what it is.
It's fine. At this point, I'm more so, worried about how John does. That's priority one. I know some of my friends will push back on that, but that's family first. So you did touch on how Coach Johnson, you said he's one of the most efficient coaches that you've ever worked with. And, during this time, the COVID era, I think a lot of coaches have kind of seen a new way of doing things, especially, tapping into that remote culture. What's your thought process about how the coaching outlook might look, a year from now when you're in the off season and, being in the office 100% of the time as opposed to maybe being able to work remote some of the time?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I think, the old guard, and I don't want to say there's anything wrong with it. Let me start off by saying that. But there's always been this kind of, I want to say, old school mentality that if someone else is working in the office, by God, we're going to be in the office working. And I think that's a mistake. I think when you're a GA for life, like I thought I was going to be there for about 10 years, you're like, what the heck are we doing in the office? And you ask yourself these questions. There's things that need to be accomplished, but what are you doing during the day? I think back just as simply as this, or simple as this. You break, Webbs, you can remember this, 6:30 staff meeting, right? And you go from there, you meet for about an hour, maybe you watch the tape from the day before practice or whatever, you're watching cut-ups for the next opponent, and you take a bathroom break. Well, how many times do those breaks become 20-minute breaks, 30-minute breaks? And my thing is, if you could just cut it down to 10 minutes, and you do that 3 times a day, there's an hour.
Peace, are you saying you're going to be a bathroom Nazi right now? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. No, hey, Peace, you're speaking my language. It was something that, I don't know if it was a generational thing, but again, out of respect. But realizing that there's still so much work that can be done and accomplished in a more precise, in a more organized amount of time. And I think COVID is exposing that. You're living it right now, and it's really interesting now to hear kind of your take on it, because everyone's forced to kind of do it now. Everyone, all schools, it's not SEC can meet with their players and the Big Ten can't. It's everybody's in the same boat. How do you make it work? And everyone's figuring out like, hey, weirdly enough, we can make this work. Is that kind of correct?
No, there's no question. I think the number one thing from my standpoint is, I think the piece that you missed in the COVID era is the connection with the players, going back to that word connection. But other than that, I've been able to accomplish every single thing from my house or my kitchen table that I was able to accomplish from in the office, besides that connection and that human interaction piece that's so important, it's very important. But I had remote login to my desktop computer at the office. I was able to make every cut up I needed for meetings. I was able to make a drill tape. I was able to make all those different things. And I'm hoping that nowadays people are going to start realizing that you don't have to work 16 hours a day. You can go home. I bragged on Coach Johnson a little earlier. You can go home and be a dad. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit too new school in terms of that. I do think I have kind of an old soul too, but why can't you go to your kids' games, your little league games in the spring? Why can't you make it to the football game? Chad Morris, I don't know Chad Morris. I met him once. He took a lot of grief because when he was the head coach at Arkansas, he was flying back to see his son play his senior year of high school. I mean, my gosh, what are we talking about here? Family is a lot more important than freaking football. I hope that's been proven, especially over the last few months. I think in terms of the efficiency piece, you can get a lot done from home, and I think that's been proven true, and I'm hoping in the future. I know if I'm ever put in that position, that it will be used in some capacity within the framework of the university and the different things they need from a certain work or a certain amount of hours and all that stuff, however that piece works and however they're paying people. But, honestly, man, I've always kind of believed in the off season, especially you can work Monday through Thursday, have 4 really, really good days and take Friday off. Why not? As long as the recruiting piece doesn't get interrupted, I think you can do it. And then, I don't know. It's not a touchy subject.
And Peags, I mean, not to cut you off there, but just to kind of piggyback off you is with how hard the season or how demanding the season is, and just as it is, even when you peel it away and you make it so streamlined as possible, there's still an amount of investment of time and energy of focus, so that, if you're able to in the summertime to kind of balance that out a little bit, and then, be able to balance out, your family life or your social life, because during the season you should be so kind of dialed in that you do only get maybe one evening off there, where it could be like your I guess your date night or whatever. But if a program is run well and you have a good system, and again, this is my opinion, I think we share the same idea. If your system is, kind of strong and organized, it shouldn't be that hard to teach week in and week out.
No question.
And you should be able to do that with you and go and see your kids and stuff. But I'll let you kind of pick it up from there.
No, one thing I was going to bring up, I was going to get to my next point, is just that year I spent with you at Minnesota. Now, we didn't win the national championship, we didn't win the Big Ten, but I think at the time, 9 wins at Minnesota was considered a pretty darn good season. Obviously, they just had a great year with Coach Fleck and those guys, but we went home after practice every day. And is there some things that maybe we could have been a little better at, blah, 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 all that stuff? Maybe. But I'll say this, that may have been the best year in terms of the players knowing what to do that I've ever been around. I never felt like we went into a game where we weren't prepared. You can make the argument, it was a red zone throw. Maybe we should have done this a little bit more, but I thought as far as the just sheer execution, I thought our guys went out and executed at a high level, and I always felt like I was really rested because we went home. And we started early in the morning and all that stuff, but I thought the guys that had families, like Coach Reed, he was refreshed the next day because he got to go home and have dinner with his kids. Now, I think that's important. I think for him to break this or having dinner with your kids is a really important piece, and having your family around the facility is really important. And that year was very enlightening to me because up until that point, I'd always had the old school mentality. Like, my God almighty, why wouldn't I be in the office? You know, it's football. And I think as you get a little bit older and a little bit more mature and you start being more efficient with your day, you realize there's other ways to do it that can be a little better. And you have to be transparent with yourself and say, hey, how can I be a little bit better today and more efficient so I can do the other things? Because, Coach Weber, you know it as well as I do, you get burnt out. It will burn you out because it is 16 hours a day for, 12, 14 weeks, 15 weeks, and it will grind you down to the ground. And unless you have that work-life balance, it's tough. It really is. And I think there's a place for a little more balance, and I think this COVID, as unfortunate of a situation as it's been for everyone, there's going to be some positive, I think, from a coaching standpoint. And before I get in trouble here, I want to make sure that we know that Mel Tucker is phenomenal to work for. He gave us more than enough time off last year at Colorado, and it was the same situation. We only went 5-7. But I'll tell you this, I felt like we were prepared every week. We gave ourselves a chance to win every game, and I thought our coaches were – his thing was, man, you get your work done, go home. Get you a good night of sleep, come back in refreshed, because we did all the morning practice. Now, did you do that at UCLA?
Yeah, wait, you guys, so you did like practice at 7 a.m.?
We had meetings starting at 7 a.m. and we were done by 11.
Oh, interesting piece. We actually started practice at 7 a.m. at UCLA.
Nice.
The field. We had balls up in the air at 7 a.m.
I like it. I think I would like that personally.
Get out of here.
I'd rather get up early in the morning than stay late personally.
I think there's actually studies. Sorry, Steve.
No, you're good.
There's studies, right? I mean, kids who are 18 years old, 18 to 20 years old, they shouldn't be getting up that early. You know what I mean? And if they are,
that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. That was my concern about the morning practice. It was way better for me. But you know as well as I do, college kids don't go to bed 8 hours before they're supposed to.
Peags, you were sleeping at 7:30 after you watched, I don't know, what TV show probably were you watching at the time, and you went to sleep afterwards. You're sleeping at 7:30, and 12 good hours of sleep. And up till, until 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Peags, you touched on a good point, and I just want to make a comment between like this new school and old school mentality, in terms of the work-life balance. There can be a mix. You touched on like being able to go home versus working 60-hour weeks. Especially in the off season, you don't need to be there 100% of the time, but it's not saying that you're going to relocate and go somewhere else. You can still be in that town and be able to be home with your family and do stuff, wake up and work. But if you have a recruit coming to town, if you have some sort of, tour that needs to take place, you can be there. So it's just finding that nice mix or balance to where you can, fit the demand of coaching as well as fit the demand of being a dad or a boyfriend, whatever it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other piece, man, from Minnesota, I ended up at Georgia, and Coach Smart's phenomenal. He's one of the best head coaches in the country. And, Georgia, because of where it's located, has access to so many football players. And this is before they made February dead. And I'm being dead serious, man. I got there in like early February, right after signing day. I remember us having maybe 2 weekends off over the course of that entire year. And that's not me complaining. It was just enlightening to me that, like, my gosh, man. And Coach Smart the next year made it a priority. He was like, guys, we're taking some weekends off this year because I can't go another year like that. And we just played for the national championship. And I mean, you could see it in his face. He was burnt out. And that's not, he didn't say it. He wouldn't say it like that, but you could see it. I mean, certainly. I mean, the guy's pouring his heart and soul into that thing every day for 15 straight weeks with 2 weekends off. Besides your normal summertime, you do get off. I mean, it was just a constant grind, and that's what but with that said, that's what makes Georgia such a great job, is that you have access to so many players within your region.
Sure. Yeah, and you bring up a good segue into a new topic about your experience being at Georgia. How did you kind of keep the right long-term mindset in place being at Georgia and maybe biting the bullet being a GA? I know you've talked, the value that it's brought you, but what was that like before you got there?
It was one of those situations where I was at Minnesota previously, and I thought I was in a good spot from a professional standpoint there. Like, I thought I'd done a really good job, and I thought some positive things were about to happen, and then obviously the situation happened there. And, it was one of those deals where I actually got offered a couple GA QC type roles, and it really came down to me being closer to home. And I always was intrigued by the Nick Saban way. Who wouldn't be at this point? The success that he's had. I knew Coach Smart, if he was smart, no pun intended there, he would try to emulate what Coach Saban had done probably about as closely as anybody could. Because he'd worked under him for so many years and had so many valuable lessons that he was taught. And that's really what it came down to me. And I came, going into it, you asked Steve, I don't want to say it was a humbling experience because, I think I was 31 or so, and it was just, man, one more year of this crap, man, because it was the last year I could possibly GA because you only get a few years after post-graduation. But somewhere along the line, I decided that, and this kind of carried over, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, just be thankful for what you have. I mean, the Georgia GA job, if you put that on Football Scoop right now today, there would be, to work with the O-line, to work under Sam Pittman, to work under Kirby Smart, 10,000 applicants.
Yeah,
From people with full-time benefited positions trying to get in. And I realized immediately how blessed I was to have that opportunity, just simply because, man, it was like I'd worked in football for, probably close to 10 years at that point. That 1 year was more valuable than the 10 previous. It almost felt like I was graduating and going to grad school in football.
Sure.
Because there was one purpose at Georgia, and it was to win football games, period. And Coach Smart held everyone to a standard. And I really do respect Coach Smart. He was hard on me, and he demanded, if you watch Coach Smart, you can see it on TV. He's very animated. He gets after it. He's colorful and all those things. When I first got there, man, he was just all over me. I'm like, my God almighty, what is this guy feel, man?
You got to earn your stripes there, Peags.
No question. But it was during scout team one day, because the way we did it at Georgia, the offensive coaches went to the defensive scout team. So I was coaching the offensive scout team. And obviously Coach Smart's the defensive coordinator, even though he didn't play at Georgia. That's his background. He's involved in everything. That's his baby. I mean, that's what they're going to be good on defense because Kirby Smart's going to make sure they're good on defense. Also because they have really, really, really freaking good players. But that's the other side.
That helps.
One day helps a lot. One day he was getting on someone. I think he was Richard LeCount, who was a freshman at the time. He's going to be a senior this year, which is crazy how time flies. And he was getting on Richard, but he was teaching him. Like, yeah, he might have been saying, blah, 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 like it was loud. It might have been a bad word, maybe darn or something he said in there. And I just noticed that he was teaching him. It wasn't like a negative thing whatsoever. And then the next time he got on my ass, I just kind of heard it, and I was like, yeah, he's doing the same thing to me. And from that moment on, I never in any way had a negative thought about Coach Smart. And I never had a negative thought before that.
No, I get what you're saying, though. Yeah,
but, I mean, I was just like, what is this guy? Yeah, I mean, he's a perfectionist. He wants to win it all. And they're going to win it all at some point, I'm sure. And it's because of him. It's the standard that he sets every day. It feels like every single second of every single day. I don't want to say it feels like.
Well, no, Peags, to me, it just reminds me of us playing pickup basketball and just some of the words that would come out of your mouth when we were playing pickup basketball back at University of Minnesota. Just your desire to win and the coaching that came out is like, I knew you're saying words that probably were inappropriate to say in a gym.
Like darn.
Yeah, darn or
like darn. I was saying darn a lot.
And but what I knew what it was is like, this guy just wants to win. So play some freaking defense here, okay? So
exactly the same concept. I mean, it's he wants to win, and he wants to win the right way. And we had some period that carried over. I mean, it must have been 30 minutes of him telling me what a great young coach I was and how inspired he was to see the great work I was doing with those guys. And I'm lying my butt off right now. He did not say one nice word to me for about 30 minutes.
I gotcha.
Looking back on it, the guy's right. He's holding you to a standard, and you got to play to the standard, coach to the standard, work to the standard, and that makes a huge difference, man. When you see the guy at the top doing the exact same things he's asking you to do, that's inspiring. Like that makes you want to work for that guy. And again, I know it might sound like I said some negative things about him, but I didn't.
No.
I will tell
man,
anybody that I ever
Peace. It's that
Coach Smart as much as anybody in the country, because I think he's not only one of the smartest football coaches, but he's just the best, man. His work ethic, his attention to details, as good as anybody in the country. I respect him, and he's a good man. I mean, he really is. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, no, Peags, and I just to kind of hit off of that is something that I've heard. And I've had to tell myself this because I'm one where if someone yells at me and ridicules me or whatever it may be, however you want to describe it, yeah, defense mechanisms go up, or you feel uncomfortable or whatever it may be. But then you also realize that this is an emotional game. It's an emotional sport. And that each rep and each practice rep really matters. You can't you only get so many to prepare. But then on top of that is that if he didn't care about you or if you weren't important, they wouldn't say anything to you. So the fact that
you just try to run you off.
Right. If they're coaching you hard, not only as a player but as a younger coach, it means they know you can be better, and they're just trying to bring that out of you, and it's in their own way. But it definitely works, and there's something about football and that type of coaching that still resonates, and I think is still very important for the growth.
Absolutely. One thing, going back to them, one thing that was really awesome for me is, again, I got to do the offensive scout team, and about midway through the year, I decided that it would be more, because I was always getting messages from the defensive support staff about what we could do better in practice, and I was like, well, hell, why don't I just go in there and listen? And man, you want to talk about getting a diploma in football, listening to those guys talk defensive football while I'm just I'm an offensive coach, and then Coach Smart or Coach Tucker, who's the defensive coordinator at the time, and they'd be like, hey, they're running counter here with this pressure. What do you think of this pressure versus like get up and draw it up? Or, they would say they're bringing this pressure, and I'd be like, they're going to gash you. They're going to run this away from it, and it's going to kill it. Or they're running this into it, and they're like, all right, we'll take it out. And it was really beneficial to me to hear the different perspectives, because we met during fall camp and during spring ball as a complete staff. And sometimes it turned into a defensive meeting because Coach Smart and those guys wanted to make sure their defense was right. But I can't say enough about how much I learned, man, because you get to hear the counter punches.
Right.
I mean, everybody can throw that straight jab, 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 jab. What about when they flip that jab and throw it right down your jaw? What's your counter to that?
Mm-hmm.
And that was very valuable. And another thing, going back to my Georgia days, is we probably had, for the University of Georgia, the ultimate coaches clinic. We had Dan Quinn, who's the head coach of the Falcons. We had Bill Belichick, who just won the Super Bowl, and Sean McVay, who played at Georgia, or he played high school football in Georgia. So you had like the best of the best in terms of coaches coming to speak at the high school coaches clinic that year. And I got to go sit in there and hear McVay and Kirby Smart talk offense versus defense, bunch formations, squeeze formations, all of those different things, and why they call these things, and what this does to the defense. That was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced hearing. McVay talk about where the ball needs to come out on this step rhythm and all that. From your quarterback days, like last thing you want to do is be sitting back there and just patting the ball for 45 minutes. You got to throw the ball and rhythm and have a good feel for things. This bunch set, Coach Smart saying, well, you really can't play man coverage. I mean, you can box the ball and do all those different things to it. But for the most part, you're going to get some type of zone check, which really, if teams have really good perimeter players on defense, why not get into some bunch sets and try to create these matchups, because your guys might not be able to beat those guys. And we kind of had that at Minnesota a little bit, where I'm not saying we didn't have talent at wide out, but there were some times we were a little bit outmatched on the perimeter, and some of the squeeze and tight stuff didn't give us a chance. Just because
Well, yeah, Peaks, I mean, you bring up a good point. It's like rarely are you going to go into every single game as the top dog. Right? I mean, rarely, right? I mean, hopefully you are presented that chance, but then you don't really want that. You want every week to be a challenge where you have to figure out how you can utilize your talents, your players, your scheme to counterpunch or counter the team's best things that they can do. And to remove, I guess, the ego of a coach and realize that you can. I mean, Pigs, you might be able to speak on this more than I can, but you see coaches try to force a square peg into a circle hole instead of realizing
Exactly.
this is my team. Okay, we can't do this, although this is maybe what I'm comfortable with. It's not what my team is comfortable with or best at. So we have to adapt. In order to create separation, I can't just line up one-on-one and go against these DBs. I have to stack, release, and create some type of separation for them to give them a chance. And I don't know. I mean, that's
Well, you hit on it. You know, I don't need to say a whole lot more on it, but like you hear people say all the time, we're going to do what we do. Well, they're better than we are, coach. Sometimes they are. You know, and how do we create advantageous situations for ourselves by doing that? You know, it can't be let's just line up and 11 personnel. Let's just go try to beat these guys on verticals and that type of thing. If they're better than you, you need exactly what you say. Well, let's motion to a stack. Let's start out in a stack and then motion down to a conventional set. Let's start empty, reload the back. Hey, when we get their empty check on, they don't check out of it. So, oh man, their empty check's cover two. Well, let's run the damn football at him. You know, and
whoa, or do a cover two beater, Peaks. Come on, relax.
Yeah, exactly.
We've talked a lot here about talent, and I want to talk about recruiting. A couple of things I saw, or just doing some research about what Kirby Smart instilled in you was the value in recruiting. And I can already tell you're a great recruiter, and you're big on relationships and keeping the relationships even past the kid commits. But I want to know your thought process of, what makes a great recruiter versus just, an average recruiter in the coaching industry.
I think it goes kind of both ways into what we talked about earlier. I think ultimately it's about being transparent, being true to who you are. I think kids don't get enough credit for how intelligent, how smart they are. And I think ultimately they can see through the BS. And if you're not being genuine, they're going to sniff it. I think that's what gets you in trouble in this profession and from a recruiting standpoint. I think just being honest and truthful is the way to go. And I think in my past, that's been what's most successful for me, not only from getting the kid, but also from them getting on campus and it sustaining. Because the last thing you want to do is get a kid on campus and him figure out that you lied to him the entire time during the process. If you're truthful and honest with them, they're going to respect you at the end of the day. I tell kids all the time, if you want it to be easy, don't come here. Because there's a price to pay to be a champion. And that price is hard work. And everybody, we've all played the game at whatever level. And I think every person, every program in the country does the same thing. There's some type of off-season conditioning. There's some type of summer workouts and all those things. There's a fall camp. There's a practice. But what are you doing that's a little differently? Or what are you doing that's a little different? I want intrinsically motivated guys that love the game of football, that love it, that are coming to the place for the right reasons. And Michigan State, obviously with you being a Michigan fan, I won't say too many positive things.
No. Say what you got to say.
Here. But you've seen it. Michigan State's had a lot of success. It's not like we're walking into a situation where we've got to reinvent the wheel. There's been a lot of intrinsically motivated people that have talent, that have developed under Coach Antonio and all these guys over the last few years. There's a model for success that's there, and it's our jobs to understand, from a coaching and a recruiting standpoint, to go find those type of players, because we're not there yet where we're going to go beat, the top 5-10 programs in the country head-to-head for recruits. There's certain battles we can win, certainly. But we've got to go out and find guys that love this freaking game, and the guys that love the game are going to be the guys that I believe are going to be overachievers. And I think if you have a team full of overachievers, you've got a chance for success.
Sure, yeah, and
was that the most long-winded answer to a simple question you've ever heard?
No, honesty is key in this podcast. We want your thoughts to come across as long or short as it takes to get the point across. That's what editing's for.
I'm sure Adam told you beforehand, and we'll talk your ear off now. There ain't many subjects I can't go on.
I do want to ask, you touched on finding those right recruits and finding those that want to be overachievers. Have you maybe tapped into the old running backs at Michigan State, the Le'Veon Bells or the TJ Ducketts, just to see, their thought process on how to potentially recruit or the type of mindset you need to have as a Michigan State running back?
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't been able to really connect with those guys yet. One of my plans was I was going to try to get those guys in the spring and all that stuff so there can be some interaction between them and the players. So I think that's always good. But I think you look back and you see certain things. Like I went back and watched their high school tapes and stuff like that, some of the great players that have played there in the past. And the thing that stands out to me is everybody talks about development. At the end of the day, you go back and watch those kids' tapes. They may not have been 5-star recruits and 3-star or 4-star recruits, blah, blah, blah. But they were darn good football players on tape that had a skill set that you were able to see that was going to be good in the future. It was pretty obvious. Like, that's one thing that I think kind of gets misconstrued in the profession. Like, oh, these guys are better developmental programs than the other people. Not necessarily. They just have really good players, and those guys maybe aren't as tapped out whenever they come out of, their high school programs and stuff like that. So they do develop at a little bit quicker rate than maybe some of the high-end guys, because the guys that are the 5-star recruits, you guys not as well as I do, but it's pretty obvious. I mean, it stands out. They've got an unbelievable skill set, but a lot of those guys that are ranked, 3 stars and all that stuff, they've got a skill set too. It just might not be, let's just say you're talking about a 5-tool player, they might not have all 5. They might have 4 of the 5, but there's no reason you can't develop that 5th tool and create a first-round pick. And a lot of that has to do maybe with their geographical setup. They might be from a small town where nobody's, Clearson is, I'm sure he wasn't much of a recruit. But he was,
unfortunately, as great of a career he had and now he's having in the NFL, that was a miss by how many Division I programs around not only the Midwest, but in the country. You have a first pick, like a top tier pick right there. That doesn't happen. And what I think didn't he sit like for 3 years? Am I right with that? And he only played like his last 2 years.
It was something along those lines. I know he wasn't an immediate starter. I know
you talk about having faith and having like trust in the pro and having a good program and a culture is knowing that if I can wait this out and figure it out, and then when you take over the reins, you take it, and I guess the cream of the crop rises to the top, as they say.
Well, I think was it you and I that went to North Dakota State and watched
those guys practice
that one time?
Yes, we did.
It's not a mystery why they're successful. Now they're carrying that over to Kansas State. They're doing great stuff there. It's a culture of winning. It's a culture of success. It stands out. A lot of bad words were probably used that day, but it was a really impressive thing to see.
I guess you'd call it tough.
It was a player-led program. It was obvious.
Yeah. It was tough. It's tough love, but the second word is the most important. It's still love, and there's still,
exactly.
That's
a good point.
It's hard. Like they're gonna demand a lot of you, but they're demanding a lot of you because they know you're capable of reaching that level. The old coaching saying is, as you're watching tape, is the player made a mistake here. The mistake was that he showed that he could do it once, and now we're going to expect him to do it every single time. So
exactly.
You can do it. So now we're going to expect you to do it every single time, and we'll hold you to that standard.
Yep, exactly. Hey, one example of what we were talking about a little while ago is, what's the quarterback for the Bills name? Josh Allen, I think.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, we were talking about, I was talking to someone in our recruiting department at one of the places I was. He said, yeah, we turned down Josh Allen. He was like, he just really wasn't that good on tape. We pulled up his tape, and this guy's got a missile launcher. It's an Adam Weber level arm. And
Stop it. Let's just cool the jets here. We don't need a gas up here. It's not about that.
Adam and I, we're throwing the football. We're about to play Colorado State. I think it was one of our first home games that year, and one of the coaches that I knew on the Colorado State staff, I think he was the QB coach at the time, and they're spinning around. He's like, who the hell is that guy? He's not playing today, and just spinning. He still got it. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it's hard to comb my hair in the morning, but Still feel like I can spin the football a little bit. That's one of those things that's kind of like,
I've experienced it. We got together. We're both in Chicago, so on the lakefront. And Adam brought his NFL football out, and I'm not gonna lie, I have some good hands. I can make some one-handed catches here or there. And this guy's just throwing freaking missiles.
Missiles, not just like.
My hands are in pain. I mean, serious pain. I'm like, gosh, we're casual. Right now,
I like to think.
I don't need this.
This is gonna make me sound soft, Steve. But I remember we had an intern. You remember? I called him Roger, the intern Dylan that worked in the equipment room, and he helped us out with some of the formations. I thought he would start catching the freaking ball for me about halfway through the year. Once the dang winter months started hitting, man, this guy was ripping my hands apart. I'm like, hey, Roger, why don't you come take care of this for me, man? I got you, coach.
And that was you delegating at an early level, knowing that you had to.
Yeah, that was me figuring it out a little earlier.
Yep,
That's
there you
exactly
go.
right.
I mean, it does give you perspective about some of these guys in the NFL. I mean, even, the big dogs in college, the quarterbacks, about some of these balls that they can throw. It's kind of just overlooked as a viewer about.
Yeah, well, I agree with you completely, Steve. I mean, Adam was never one to flaunt the fact that he was a 4-year starter and all that stuff at Minnesota. Good high school player. I was a decent high school player. And you always think, well, I couldn't have done that. I learned really fast. There's just a totally different skill set and ability. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to ability, and he had it. I never did. And I think you're right. People think it's a lot easier than it is. They see guys, a couple guys can make a couple 3-point shots, and they watch the NBA, and someone goes 2 for 5, and they're like, oh, he's only a 40. Oh, that's a whole shoot. You can't do that. You can't.
I do want to pump your tires really quickly. You might not have the athletic ability, but the coaching ability is there. So.
Well, I can agree with that, and I've got a different philosophy. I tell kids all the time, I'm just going to recruit a better player than you. That's my thing. I know I can't do it better than you, but I can recruit a better player than you.
And
Don't
you're
put
doing
limitations on yourself, right?
Yeah, of course. Webbs, I think you got something to say.
Well, yeah. First off, Peags, you gassed me up there. I feel like I'm on cloud 9 right now, a little bit.
Well,
No, not. But the thing is, I do miss playing catch with you. I do before games. That's like those little things that you don't realize that you'll miss when they're gone. But I appreciate playing ball with you. But the thing I guess I would like to bring up here, and I know you'll hit on it, and I've gone back and forth with my thought process on it. But you are the walking testament of this. You don't have to have done something exactly in order to coach it exactly. You don't have to actually have had to block, Lawrence Taylor to know how to block a stud D end. You can coach that. You can learn that because you're obsessed with the game. You're incredibly obsessed with the game in a good way, in a positive way, that you know it's so back and forth that you can coach somebody who can do it. And I've always, I guess, I'll say one more thing before I pose the question to you is, I've always gone back and forth. It's like, I don't want someone talking to me or coaching me unless they can do it. When in fact, I know I was very wrong there. I want somebody who to coach me because they know it like it's the back of their hand. And I feel like that's who you are as a coach. And I guess my question is, where do you get your confidence? And how does that transpire in your meeting room where, although you've never done it at that level, you can coach it at that level. Where does that confidence come from?
Well, I think it goes back to just being transparent and being honest. I don't go in there into the situation and try to say that I was an all-in player. I didn't play in the NFL. My reality is my reality. But what I've tried to do since I was a very, very young person, even before I even went to college, is I always tried to know the game of football in and tried to understand. Yeah, maybe I know I can't play NFL running back. I mean, I'd be crazy to think that. But what I can do is exactly what you said. I can find the most efficient, best way to coach that. And I have never been one that believes there's one way to do it. And I think that's what makes this game so fun is there is so many different ways to do it. It's the constant pursuit of trying to be the best and finding the most efficient and best way to do it for you. And I think that's the most important piece is finding what fits for you. It doesn't have to fit for Kirby Smart. Kirby and I don't have to be the same. Dabo Sweeney and I don't have to be the same. Mel Tucker and I don't have to be the same. Jay Johnson, who's probably my biggest mentor in the profession, we don't have to be the same. But at the end of the day, as long as you're constantly going out and trying to find new and innovative ways to get the best out of your players, and one of the best lessons I learned was when I coached high school football and got to teach geometry, is that every kid in your classroom is totally different. You have to differentiate that learning so you're reaching the smartest kid in the room and maybe the kid that's not at quite as high a level academically at that point. And I think that's what's really important to me. It's just finding different ways to reach every different kid in the room and having confidence in knowing that you've done everything you can to prepare them and give them the confidence that they're prepared to go out and play on Saturday and in their future. Because that's ultimately what it's about. Kids don't care. They don't care if you played and all that stuff. All they care about is can you make them a better football player. At the end of the day, from a coaching standpoint, and there's other pieces that we deal with a little bit more in college, but, from your NFL experience, you look at Sean McVay. I use him a lot as an example. When he got the head coaching job with the Rams, everybody's like, this guy's 30 years old. He can't reach these guys. They don't care. They just want to know if you can make them a better football player. And can you help them be successful in their job? And that's what I think I do a good job of, or at least I'm confident because I do know I put the work in. I know I put the time in, and I know that I know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying I'm John Gruden.
I don't want you to, I'll vouch for you there, and that's not right there.
We'll pump your tires.
No, I'll pump your tires there. You set up on the jack, I'll pump them up here. That's exactly that, is that you can guide them and make them and help them reach their goals, which is the definition of a coach. They will follow you. They will listen to you. It doesn't matter about what you've done before, because who cares about what you've done before? What can you do for me now? Can you help me out now? And that's what I think I've learned, and I've learned a lot from you. So again, I'm glad you're able to hit on that, elaborate in on it. But yeah, thanks so much. And I think that's why you're a phenomenal coach.
I appreciate that. It comes from passion and transparency, man. It's not complicated, I don't think. I think this is a game that gets overcomplicated at times, but it's just being true to who you are and understanding who you are. And I think when people lose track of who they are, issues arise. And if you can believe in something, that's why philosophy is so important. Core values, principles, and things that you live by and try to teach by, you're going to have success if you stick to it and you recruit the right type of people that buy into that piece.
Sure, yeah. This whole podcast, you've kind of really, the theme has been mentorship and different things that you've picked up at each step of the way. And you've talked about the impact, Coach Johnson as an example has had on you. And it's fantastic that you guys get to, keep the relationship going, and we're looking forward to seeing where that goes. And my question is it's not so much has to be around Coach Johnson, but with all the coaches that you've been a part of, and a part with, what's that most influential advice that you've gotten along the way?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of things that you pick up over the years. But I think the number one thing that I probably learned, and Coach Sweeney said it a while back, is bloom where you're planted. And I have had a lot of stops, but they've been kind of unintentional in terms of me leaving. You want it, whatever job you're doing, you want to do the best possible job at the place you're at. Because I think, again, when you start worrying about that outcome-based world where all you're trying to do is look for the next job, it's like, yeah, I want to be a head coach. I want to be an offensive player. All those things are true. But if I don't do a damn good job coaching the running backs at Michigan State, that's not going to happen if I don't do a good job of recruiting. So the important piece to me is to bloom where you're planted and take advantage of the situation that's right now in front of you.
I've actually never heard that one before, and it's so relatable. It's not necessarily just coaching. It's especially in a world that's so based on social media and so many different perspectives and other people that you encompass just based off of social media and seeing other people's success. There's unnecessary pressure that's kind of put on you, and it's from yourself. You do it to yourself.
Absolutely.
Like, your perspective is wanting to be a head coach one day, but when it comes, it comes. It's not something that you need to worry about right now. you have a present to worry about and your players right now to worry about, and developing them and making them, either they're in the NFL or not, making them into better individuals. And I think you're going to do a great job of that. That's definitely something I'll pull from this interview. Got to write that quote down.
Yeah, no.
No problem. I can send that to you after.
Yeah, no, please, just in a text. I actually second that too. I am actually one where I feel like I know a lot of these quotes. That's one that I don't know if I've heard that one before. So that's kudos to you.
We are starting a Wisdom Wednesday on Instagram. So every Wednesday we're going to be posting quotes. So I think that might be the first one that we get.
Yeah, I'm going to get on there and be like, interesting.
Yeah. Please, one again, as we kind of wrap this thing up, I want to get just a little,
What, man? I want to keep going, man. Let's go, man.
Well, no, we'll stop recording. We'll keep
Cap here.
Then we can start talking about really the fun stuff. No, question for you though, Peags, and I just out of curiosity here. Okay, books you've read, that you're reading, or you will read, that you think has been important enough to acknowledge in this podcast?
I think, I don't know if you're talking more recently, the books I've read, but the book that I always go back to, that I think the ultimate book as far as the coaching profession is Finding the Winning Edge by Bill Walsh. I think that's the one that kind of stands out to everyone because it kind of takes you through the whole process, way of approach, and all the different things he did to build the 49ers dynasty. But he has another book called The Score Takes Care of Itself. It's kind of broken down into lessons and different things. And I would say that's probably the book that's had the most influence on me, just focusing on that day-to-day action. Because as the old saying goes, you're a champion way before you hold that trophy up. It's your daily actions. It's the things you do every single day. It's the championship habits that create the champion. And that's what I learned from that book, just as simple as, obviously things have changed over the years. There's music in practice and stuff, but, Walsh was avid about guys having.
Do you like music in practice?
I don't mind it. There's obviously the peaks that they say you shouldn't rely on external stimuli, motivation, and all that stuff, but whatever. When I was at ULF, yet as a GA, I remember the speaker just happened to be right behind my individual group. That was kind of annoying, but I think it's good. I don't like it the whole practice, but I just think, I can't hear it. That's exactly right. I don't think I can. What'd you say? No, but
what kind of dance moves do you have on the sideline there?
Horrible. I can tell you that.
That's not true, Peags.
Yeah, don't shoot yourself. This podcast is about pumping each other up.
Oh, God. I can't even imagine what you may
Peags.
have. I can't even imagine what you might have access to. Some of my dance moves that you've done.
No. And dude, you got, I don't even know what the style of those shoes are called. They're professional, I guess they're dress shoes for lack of better words. But when they come to a really tight point and they kind of come up a little bit in the front, what are those? What's that style
Shoes?
called? I don't know what those are
What'd you
called.
say there, Steve?
Tap shoes? I don't know.
It's not almost like a nice loafer or something,
They're high quality shoes that, I never appreciated until, I saw William Peagler walk into the coach's locker room, and these shoes were just, they're just really nice shoes. They're nice professional.
He's got swag. He's got swag.
Well, you always want to dress for the job you want next, right? The job you want. You got to have those nice shoes. But what I realized when I went to Georgia, Jim Trammell, the offensive coordinator, he wore sweatpants every day. So hell, I made the change to sweatpants a few years ago. Much more comfortable.
Yeah, Coach Cheney was a little more relaxed, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Peags, we got just one last question, and this has been awesome. Longest interview we've had so far, so congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I want to ask, what's the most important fundamental that you like to teach to your players? And it doesn't matter, the position group, just as a coach to your players. What's something you like to instill in them?
Are you talking fundamental thought, or are you talking fundamental as far as the game?
I think the game. I want to know about the game.
Well, the ball. Take care of the football. I mean, that's the ultimate fundamental, If you don't have the football, you really don't have a game. So what we try to teach is just, I think there's some study out there that says if you win if you win the turnover margin, I think you win like 75% of your games.
Yeah, no, you're right. Something like that.
And if you're +2, it goes up. If it's +3, it goes up, and that type of thing. So to me, it's all about the ball. You hear Pete Carroll say it. I think Coach Fleck's got a good quote: "The ball is the program." Pete Carroll, like I just said, it's all about the ball. And we're always going to lock it up tight and all that good stuff, and we're always going to finish. We're never going to just raise up through the line and all that stuff. I think you always want to give the guys a starting point and a finish point. And the finish point is going to be the ball locked up, finishing through a line in some capacity. Because at the end of the day, man, you turn the ball over, you give yourself no chance. And that's the biggest fundamental piece for me. And it'll be that way for the next third. It'll be that way as long as I'm in this profession.
Yeah, no, I don't see that changing. That's not something that like evolves. That's like the fundamental thing of football that sometimes gets lost. But if you install that, like you said, I know Coach Fleck, and I know he's a descendant of Greg Schiano. That's like the first thing that's taught is the ball is the program. Without the ball, you can't score points. And when on defense, you do everything you can to get the ball. And once you get the ball, you score. Like that's it. That's football in a nutshell. So I do like that, Peags.
All right. Well, I think that's all we got. And until next time, this is not a one-stop shop, Peags. So we're looking forward to seeing your success.
Are we going to do this again next week?
Yeah, seriously.
No, Peags,
you guys just ruined it, man. You got me excited and wanted to talk. So we missed like my UL Lafayette years, my Coffeyville junior.
That's what I'm saying. No, I know. And this Peags, that's what I'm sitting thinking back here. We're an hour into this thing. I'm like, man, we didn't even get into the stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't get into the
A lot
stuff.
of information. And Peags, we're in Chicago, and East Lansing is only about, just under 4 hours away. So hopefully we have a season, and we would love to, come up to East Lansing. Maybe at the Michigan State game, you can get us tickets or something. I don't know.
Well, it depends on what you're
we'll
wearing.
be able to catch up in person.
Good answer, Peags.
Yeah,
I'm a neutral. I wear neutral these days.
I hear you. You got to have that minute at UMass.
Yeah, the Minutemen, maybe.
Let's go.
Okay, well, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate your time. Webbs, I don't know if you have any closing remarks.
Yeah, no, again, just Peags, no, again, thanks so much. I could, and we kind of joked about it, but really could talk probably for the rest of the night here for a couple hours. And that's a testament not only to, I guess, your personality, you as a person, but just also the stories and just, what you've done along the way. I look forward to getting you on again here in the future. Also, just talking to you when we're not recording and just be able to catch up. But you're off to big things. Michigan State's got a good one here. I look forward to continue just watching your growth, your development. You're a phenomenal coach, phenomenal person. And thanks so much for giving us your time and your stories and your philosophy. I think our viewers and our listeners will really appreciate this. So thanks so much, Peags.
No problem, guys. The pleasure was mine. And like I said, anytime you guys want to do it again, just let me know. And can't wait to have you, Steve, come down for the game this year in those neutral colors.
Appreciate you, my man. Well, have a good night, guys.
No problem.
Talk soon.
Yep, see ya.
It's something I believe in. You light up the night, yeah. You light up the night. You got the sun in your eyes.